Hi, I'm Raj, and if you haven't been to my channel, it's great to see you here. If you're building a storage-heavy app, there is a tendency for us to reach out to storage services like Supabase or Uploadthing, etc. But as your app scales beyond a point, you would start to see that your cloud storage costs are exploding, and most of the services that you're paying for are just simple wrappers on top of AWS S3 buckets. So in my mind, I see no reason why you should use these apps that are wrappers on S3 buckets. Instead, you can build your own apps and APIs to wrap around these S3 buckets yourself. And that's what I did. I built my own file storage with a thumbnail preview, search and filter, etc. on top of a single AWS S3 bucket. And in this content, we're going to talk about the architecture behind this app, the code base, and also I'm going to teach you how to clone my repo and set this up using AWS S3 so that you no longer have to pay for cloud storage and services, but use S3 for all your needs and purposes. With that being said, let's get started. We're going to break this content down into 3 sections. First, we're going to run this app and talk about its features. Then we're going to talk about the architecture and the code base. And finally, we're going to clone the repo and try to set this app up using S3 buckets and Lambda. If you've done the setup properly and run the app, this is how the app would look. You would see the landing page with some text. When you click Get Started, you'd be taken to the login page where you can see a Google Auth setup using Nextjs. After login, we land on our file gallery, and now it's empty. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few files using Uppy. And Uppy takes care of the entire upload process for us. And the uploads happen through the pre-signed S3 URLs. Once done, we can see the thumbnails generated for our images and a file icon for all the other files. For images, we can do a preview and it would download the detailed image for us. And for other files, we don't have a preview. Instead, we can click on the link to download the file. We also have a pagination in place, so as you add more files, you have more pages. You can check out the file information by quickly hovering over the pill, and also you can filter the files based on a few different types. And you can also search your files based on the name of the files. And here on the right side, you can see the stats for the usage. And you can see that we have the information for how much data you've stored on your bucket, plus how much data you've downloaded from the bucket. The important thing that you need to understand here is that most of your cost on your S3 buckets will be the cost for your storage and the cost for the download bandwidth. And you can also go to the settings through the user button. And there you can see the information regarding your account, and also you can check out your usage. And that's pretty much it. When the user uploads the files, we generate a set of pre-signed URLs for all the files and return the information to the client. And the client uses the pre-signed URL to upload the files directly to the S3 bucket. And once uploaded, we also update the database with the file key and other file information. And that includes the file name, the S3 key, the file type, and the file size, etc. Once the files are uploaded to our main bucket, we trigger a Lambda function only for the image files to generate thumbnails for the images. And these images are stored in the thumbnail bucket, and we render them after the upload. For files with no thumbnails, we render a file icon. And with regards to the download process, we do the following. When the app loads for the first time, we get the file keys for the user and load the thumbnails based on the file keys if they're available. And if they click on the download button, we download the files from the main file bucket. With regards to the code base, most of the S3 interaction lies inside the lib s3 core.ts file. Here we call the APIs that interact with our S3 buckets. And then inside our S3 action.ts, we have all the server actions that are connected to these APIs. Inside the libdb action.ts file, we have all the server actions that are connected to updating our database after a successful file upload. And the Uppy uploader component combines these two actions for us. At the time we upload something, we get the upload params from our server action and upload all our files to the pre-signed S3 URL. And on successful upload, we update the database with the files uploaded. And for downloads, we have two API routes, one for thumbnails and other one for actual file downloads. The thumbnails are generated by Lambda, so we wait for some time until the thumbnails are ready. And we also stream the response through our route so that only authorized users can access the thumbnails. We do the same for our file downloads as well, where we check if the person is authorized and then we stream our file response through our API route. And inside DB API folder, we can find the file.ts, where you can see all the APIs that are used for search, filter, and pagination. And you can see the APIs for inserting and deleting files. The account.ts file contains the APIs for Next.js Google OAuth token management. The usage.ts contains the APIs for tracking usage every time you store or download your files. And I will leave the rest of the code base for you to figure things out on your own. For the setup, these are the steps that we have to go through. And you have steps starting from 1 to 13. And we're going to take it step by step. So for the first step, what we're going to do is we're going to clone the repo and run npm install. I've already cloned the repo and I'm going to run npm install to install all the dependencies. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a .env local file and copy all my env example information into my local file. This is the Postgres app that I've installed on my MacBook Pro. And the name of the database is going to be template1. So I'm going to update that. And for auth secret, I think we just have to run this command. Okay. I'll copy that and paste it here. And for the next step, we have to get the Google OAuth credentials from Google Console. So it's just a simple setup that you do for the next auth. I'm going to go to console.googlecloud.com and I'm going to create a new project so that you understand what needs to be done. S3 upload thing demo 2. All right, so I'm going to open my project and then the next step, we have to create an OAuth consent screen. And I'm going to click OAuth consent and it's going to be external app. I'm going to give this a name. Upload thing demo 2. And I'm going to add some email for support. And I'm going to save and continue. And then we're going to add the basic scopes that we need for OAuth. Email, profile, and OpenID. And I'm going to click on save and continue. All right, and I'm going to add my main email as a test user so that I can test my app with my email. Once this is ready, I'm going to go back to dashboard and I'm going to click on credentials and I'm going to create an OAuth client ID. This is going to be my web app. So for this one, we're going to use the link from Nextauth, Google OAuth docs, and use this in place of the redirect URI. All right, I'm going to click create. And this is going to be our client ID. So I'm going to copy this and paste it. And I'm going to copy the client secret as well and paste it. So, all right, so with this, our step 4 is done. The next step, we have to create an AWS user for our app. So for that, I'm going to go to my AWS console, click on IAM, and I'm going to create a user. So username is going to be Next.js app user. And I'm going to click next. And I'm going to click next. And I'm going to create a user. Now I'm going to go into Next.js app user and I'm going to create access key. And this is going to be an app that runs outside AWS, right? Let's say if we deploy to Vercel, then it's going to be an app that runs outside AWS. All right, so I'm going to click next. And I'm going to create access key. So this is going to be our access key that you see here. And also, I'm going to copy the secret key and paste it right here. All right, that looks good. I'm going to save. I'm going to go back and I'm done. All right, so now we have to create 2 S3 buckets for our app, one for the file and another one for the thumbnails. I'm going to go back to the dashboard and I'm going to click S3 and I'm going to create a bucket. So this bucket's going to be Raj Next main file bucket. All right, so I'm going to come down and I'm going to create a bucket. I'm going to create another bucket, Raj Next thumbnail file bucket. All right, our 2 buckets right here. The next thing that we have to do is we have to allow cores on these buckets. So that means our app would be able to access these buckets to get and put data into these buckets. So that's the reason why we have to update the cores. So for that, I'm going to go back to my app and click on AWS policies and go into my cores bucket and copy this JSON file and go back to the dashboard. Click on my main file bucket and go to permissions and go to the section where it talks about cores. And I'm going to paste it. So now I'm going to allow all the origins, but at the time you deploy, you can just change this. I'm going to save. I'm going to go back to bucket. I'm going to do the same thing for thumbnails bucket as well. Go to permissions, cores, and paste this information. All right, that looks great. All right, so the next thing that we have to do is we have to create a policy for our user to access our S3 bucket. So that means we've got our Next.js user. We've got our Next.js app user. That's part of IAM. And if this user wants to access a resource called S3, then we need to add something called as a policy in between. So this policy will give access to this user to this resource. If this is not a user and this is another AWS service like Lambda, then what we do is we assign a role to the Lambda. And this role would have a policy. And this can access the S3 bucket. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to assign a policy to our Next.js user. So for that, we have to create a policy. Now I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and then I'm going to click on IAM, and I'm going to create a policy. So I've already created the bucket access policy for our user. So if I go into user bucket access policy, so I'm going to copy this information and paste it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the name of the bucket. Raj next main file bucket. And I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it. And then I'm going to replace the name with thumbnail file bucket. I'm going to give a name to the policy. And I'm going to create a policy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the user to this policy. So I'm going to go to the policy and I'm going to click entities attached. And I'm going to click attach and I'm going to choose our Next.js app user. And I'm going to attach the policy. The next thing is that we have to create a policy for a Lambda to access our S3 buckets for thumbnail generation. So I'm going to go back to policies and I'm going to create another policy on S3. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to go back to my app and copy this information and paste it right here. So this is a policy for the Lambda to access the bucket. So it needs to get the file from the main bucket and it needs to put the file into thumbnail bucket. So if I go back to the app, you can see that I've got this Lambda bucket access.json file. And I'm going to update the bucket name, Raj next main file bucket. I'm going to copy this and paste it. It's going to be thumbnail file bucket. All right, so that looks good. Lambda thumbnail access. Now this policy is created. Okay, now we have to create a role to attach this policy to. So I'm going to go back to IAM and I'm going to go to roles. I'm going to create a role. This role needs to be assigned to the Lambda. So I'm going to click next. And we have to use this policy that we've just made, S3 Lambda thumbnail access policy. And Lambda thumbnail row. And I'm going to create the role. All right, so now our role is ready. Now it's time for us to create our Lambda with this role. I'm going to go to the dashboard, click on Lambda, click on create function. And the function name is going to be Lambda thumbnail generator. I'm going to leave everything else. And here you can see that I'm going to add my existing role. So Lambda thumbnail role is going to be my role. And I'm going to create my function. Okay, so now this is going to be interesting. So what we have is, if you go back to our app, you can see that there is a folder called Lambda. So inside this folder, we have a package.json file, and I've already ran this package command, and I've made my function.zip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the zip file from my local. All right, so I'm going to save. That looks good. And now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the Lambda to have more memory. And I'm going to give it 1 GB of memory and also 1 GB of storage. And timeout is going to be 10 seconds. All right, that looks good. So what this Lambda function does is, first it checks if the object has been deleted from the main bucket. If yes, it also removes the thumbnail from the thumbnail bucket. If not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image and try and generate a thumbnail for that image and put that into the thumbnail bucket. So that's what this Lambda does. And the Lambda needs to trigger when we put something in our S3 bucket. So I'm going to create, the source is going to be S3. And the bucket's going to be Raj Next main file bucket. And every time I put something in this bucket, and every time I delete something from this bucket, then this needs to be created. And here you have to check this box because we have to ensure that we have two different buckets for the thumbnail and also the main file. And I'm going to add the trigger. That's pretty much it. And the last thing that I want to do is I want to add my env variable called dest bucket that we use inside our Lambda. For example, if we just go inside the Lambda, you can see that we've got this dest bucket. So I'm going to copy this and go back to my file and add dest bucket. It's going to be Raj next thumbnail file bucket. All right, now let's go back to our app and check our .env file. We've got two buckets. The first one is going to be Raj next main bucket and Raj next thumbnail bucket. And I want to see where these buckets are. For example, I'm going to go back to my dashboard. I'm going to click S3. And here you can see that we have the region right here. So I'm going to copy this information and I'm going to paste it right here. All right, so I'm going to run npm run dev to start the app up. You can see that we have our beautiful landing page. And I'm going to click get started. And I'm going to click login and try and log in using my Next.auth Google Auth. And we've just landed into the dashboard. Now we don't really have any files. Let's try and upload a few files to see if this is working. I'm going to upload some images and see if this works. All right, so the upload seems to be working as expected. So this is the Uppy component. You can see that the thumbnails are getting generated on the fly by the Lambda, and that looks good. And I'm going to try and upload another file that's not too big because we have set the file size to be 500 MB. So this is going to be a 7 MB file. And maybe another image of me. All right, that looks good. And we're going to upload some more files. A movie file and a PDF file. With the toast component, you can see the upload that's in progress. And once done, we load the file icons for non-image files. So these are non-image files. And if I hover on the pill, you can see that we've got more details about the file. That seems to be working great. And if I click on the images to expand, then this will get the actual file. And the same goes for other files as well. And if I do a filtering on images, you can see only images. If I filter on just PDF, you only see PDF. All right, and if I click download, you can see that it's getting downloaded. I can search by name. So I can search screenshot. And you can see only screenshot. All right, so that looks good. And you can also check out the usage right here. And it's paginated as well. And I could go to settings and I can check out the usage right here as well. All right, so, and now I'm going to delete all the files. You can see that the files are getting deleted. And if I go to our database, you can see that we only have 2 files right now, and that's what you see on the screen. And if I delete them both, we would no longer have any files in our database. That's pretty much it. And the code base is right here. I've added some information to the README, and let me know what you think in the comments.